Hello and welcome to Anden's channel, my channel, and this is a bit different. This is a bit of a different type of video. You see, usually I do like reaction videos and I usually talk about television and movies and all of that. I don't usually talk about comic books, unless of course I talk about Spider-Man, and lo and behold, I'm gonna talk about Spider-Man comic books. Okay, so this first part here, it will be me talking about Spider-Man as a character, what Spider-Man means to me and the comics that I read growing up, and why I stopped reading comic books for 10 years and why I'm suddenly back now to reading comic books. And then in the second half, that's when I'll go into more about the Amazing Spider-Man current comic book run, the 2018 comic book run, and I will talk a bit about the story of that and like the first 10 issues and my thoughts and feelings. And then in the future, when a new issue of a Spider-Man comic is out, I am honestly thinking about doing like a review-ish of that current Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man comic. Although I'm not sure if I want to do individual issues or if I want to wait until one story arc is over and then do a review-ish of that entire story arc. The problem with that, of course, is that a story arc can last either one issue, 2 issues, or an entire story arc can take like a year. You know, so it's a bit like, so I'm not really sure what to do yet. So I stopped reading comic books as a whole for like 10 years. I mean, I did read the Superior Spider-Man when Otto Octavius became Spider-Man. I read that arc. But I don't really consider that coming back to reading Spider-Man because it wasn't Peter Parker. No, but a comment had said to me when I was talking about Spider-Man in a reaction video, I think, that, oh, but they're fixing everything now. They're fixing One More Day and everything. Peter and Mary Jane, they're together now. And I'm just like, what the fuck are you talking to? What are you saying? So then I got back and I started to read this new run of Spider-Man comic books, which are written by Nick Spencer. Nick Spencer, of course, in my mind, being famous for doing the whole Nazi Hydra Captain America, which I thought was a fun thing. He also wrote the Superior Foes of Spider-Man that I then went back and started reading as soon as I saw who Peter's new roommate was. It's a bit tricky with the years and stuff, because I'm pretty sure in Sweden all the comic books came out like a year later, all the translated comic books. And so growing up with the Spider-Man from the early 2000s, my mind was very set, you know, with who Peter Parker is. He's a 23 to 25 something year old adult. He's a part-time teacher sometimes, and he's married to Mary Jane Watson. Aunt May knows who Peter Parker is. A lot of people knows who Peter Parker is. Even Black Cat Felicia knows, and they team up sometimes. And the adventures of this Spider-Man I just loved. These early comic books that I read when I was quite young, you know, like literally 10 years ago, a lot of them are still like imprinted in my mind. That's how big of an impression these comic books did for me. One of my favorite like Spider-Man stories, this fucking stupid like one-off story. J. Jonah Jameson, who wins like fucking like a camping trip with Spider-Man, and then Scorpion shows up. It's such a ridiculous like one-off thing, but I love it. I've reread that little story so often. And then we have like the whole Ezekiel thing, the other like person with spider powers. So I was just like, who the fuck is this character? I have no idea what the fuck is going on. And to this day, I don't know if like the whole Ezekiel thing is considered a good thing in Spider-Man. And then we have him like turning into a giant spider. A lot of shit, you know, that I remember. And that's when he got like he didn't have to use the web shooters anymore. I didn't really like that. Those are the comics that introduced me to the Marvel Universe. Those are the comics that introduced me to the X-Men, and really, I mean, besides the movies, of course, but also the Avengers. Like, I distinctively remember seeing the Avengers for the first time in a comic book, and that's when I think Dormammu's, like, minions are attacking New York, and Doctor Strange sends Spider-Man into, like, his own like timeline or something, and he sees himself like, as a young kid and also as an adult with like the last stand. Is that what the suit is called when he's like an older person? Basically what I'm trying to say is, by recapping all of the stories that I remember, Spider-Man left a very big impression on me as a kid, you know. I always got excited when I saw the new comic book in the mail, because you could subscribe to it, and it was so like, fuck yes, Spider-Man. And then Civil War happened, and I loved Civil War. I don't know how well received it is to like the critics, but for me as a kid, seeing all these heroes together and they're fighting, and it's just like, oh shit, this is like some epic level shit, just beautifully drawn as well. Unfortunately, right after Civil War, that led into what would be known as One More Day. And everything that I've been talking about here, I haven't looked anything up. This is all from memory, so if something is incorrect. No, One More Day is about, I think the Kingpin puts out a hit, and then Aunt May is the one who gets shot. Peter gets so upset that he puts on the black suit again. Oh no, wait a minute. No, that's Back in Black. Back in Black was like the story arc before One More Day. So the Back in Black thing happened, and Peter gets all upset. He fucking almost kills the Kingpin in jail, I'm pretty sure. And he tries his darndest to save Aunt May, and that's when One More Day happens, and he goes to every single person ever and asks them to help save Aunt May. And none of them are able to help. He literally talks to fucking God. I have no idea who that character is. All I know, when I was a kid reading it, it was just like, he's fucking talking to God right now. Literally, this God character shows all these people, just a fucking like ocean of people that Peter Parker has saved due to being Spider-Man. And then, of course, when he refuses to listen to God, the devil shows up, our ever favorite Mephisto, and he shows Peter, I'm pretty sure he shows him a future version of himself, where he's like rich and he owns like Parker Industries, which, by the way, that fucked me up when I saw that this current Peter Parker, he had like a giant like Parker Industries. I was just like, isn't that a bad future? Didn't the One More Day thing talk about that? I don't know. I never read the Spider-Man comics when he owned Parker Industries, so I don't know anything about it. No, but Mephisto showed him like a potential future where he's like old and rich and he doesn't care about anyone. And of course he shows Peter he's an MJ's kid. And Mephisto sort of like tricks him, because Mephisto is like, oh, this is what you could have had, but you didn't. Mephisto, he basically wants the marriage / the love that Peter Parker and Mary Jane share together. And once he has that, Aunt May will live again, and the whole universe will like be reset. No one will know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and Mary Jane and Peter they won't be together again. The comic book ends with Peter Parker and Mary Jane selling their marriage to the devil, ruining their future together, and that starts off the brand new day where everything is different. I didn't realize as a kid, of course, that sometimes every now and then comic book characters, they have to reboot themselves, because that's what the writers do. They constantly reboot characters and constantly like just switch them back to their status quo instead of letting the characters actually evolve. So for me, I've had this evolution of this Peter Parker from the early 2000s, and then suddenly, abruptly, it just stopped, and it was like a reboot and everything was different, and the Peter Parker that I've grown up with all these years, he was gone, you know. That Spider-Man didn't exist anymore, that the stories didn't exist anymore, the characters were different, everything was just completely different, that I couldn't read the comics anymore. It really did suck. I love that the Spider-Man comics were just so free from any like love story bullshit, because it was just Mary Jane and Peter. Such great role models. So I stopped reading comic books. I was just done. I was just like, fuck this. I wasted all these years. No, of course I haven't wasted these years. I still have the comic books. I still have all the great memories. It's just a shame that it's over. So that was the first half of this, explaining why I love Spider-Man and why I stopped reading the comic books. Now let us go into the second half, when suddenly, 10 years later, here I am reading Spider-Man comic books. Now, why did I do that?